You look straight into the camera, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just make direct eye contact.
Directly at it.
Where is the camera? Is that it right
Three,
there?
yeah.
Here?
Oh, there's three.
There, or there.
Oh, wow.
It's like hot ones.
There's like hot rocks.
They're,
Like, God.
speak of transitions.
We're singing Hampshire Valley in my old Kentucky home. Kentucky.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Kentucky Commons Radio Hour. My name is John Ronayne. I'm joined by co-host David Satterley.
Meow.
All right. Joining us today, we have a friend of the show, Buddy McHagan, head brewer, Monnik Beer Company.
That's me.
And friend of the show, new to the show, first time on, Will Gomez, head brewer of the Brew Bridge.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome. Yeah, thank you. We'll have quite a few things to share with you guys today. If you guys have been following along with any of our social media, maybe you've seen, you already mentioned hot rocks, so maybe you've seen some hot rocks going into some wort. We have some of that here we're going to try for you guys. But we thought maybe since this is your first time on, Will, we'd like to learn a little bit more about Brew Bridge.
Okay.
You guys want to just give kind of the elevator pitch, or we could also start too, however
yeah.
you got into this whole thing.
So Brew Bridge, we're located in Owensboro, Kentucky. We're the first brewery in Owensboro since Prohibition, and we'll turn 5 years next July, so it's pretty exciting.
That's fantastic. And you were there basically since the inception, but had you been a brewer prior to?
Not homebrewed for a couple of years, and then I became part of the team about 2 months after the brewery opened. So.
And how did you get into the whole homebrewing thing? What was it? What was it?
I was into craft beer, right into college, into craft beer, and then had a couple buddies, and they're like, "Hey, man, you like craft beer so much, why don't you brew it?" And it took a little bit of persistence, and finally, they twist my arm into doing it. First batch I did was it was a coffee porter, and it turned out horrible.
Bold choice to start with
It
coffee.
was disgusting. To this day, they still say it was awesome, but I don't believe them.
I mean, coffee beers are awesome. You can just ask Buddy over here. He loves coffee.
Yeah, it's great.
Coffee's good. But no, I caught the bug and kept home brewing. Then I moved to Kentucky. I'm originally from New York, and I've been traveling around for a couple of years. Met my now wife, moved to Kentucky, worked at Green River Distilling for a couple months, and then I met the guys from Brew Bridge and just helped out any way I could, and I got my foot in the business, and then, yeah, I'm here now.
And I remember when Brew Bridge opened, I remember some of the guys coming up and like workshopping recipes and stuff like that. And so I feel like you came in really when it kind of started to take a different turn, because it started off very much just like a homebrew project with a tap room.
Yeah.
Is that kind of how it was when you got there?
Yeah, I mean, I got there, we opened, like I said, July, and then I got there officially September. So I took over from the previous brewer, and then, I mean, literally started from scratch. I'm self-taught, so I had to learn everything from the get-go. Did get some advice from people like Doug Laramy from Henderson Brewing Company. You know, I just asked a lot of people a lot of questions, and I'm still learning. So
This Will guy, he's just got all these questions.
Yeah, no, I can bug people for real.
People who ask people like people who actually know how to like ask a question and like listen to what you're saying.
I have a question.
Yeah,
Buddy, what's in your glass?
This is Secret Fire. This is the beer that we brewed together. So the concept was to make a Steinbier. It's kind of a muddied history of what that means. We chose to fast forward to the history of Steinbier to the 80s in Franconia, when they were making lagers using the traditional method of stones to heat their wort. The actual original, kind of story of the Steinbier movement was actually out of Austria, and was more closely related to like a farmhouse style. They would use the stones in an actual mash tun with the grain and everything in there. We chose to use the modern technique of adding stones to first runnings. Essentially, you're getting very similar character that you would get from a decoction from those stones being in direct contact with the wort. So that's what this is. We're calling it a Helles Bock. So a Helles Steinbock, I think, is where we landed on a name. But Very similar grain bill to traditional Helles, bumped up to about 6.3%. And the Stones have just absolutely opened this beer up with malt character that I don't think I've ever really experienced before. So
Yeah,
pretty pumped.
Yeah, it's gnarly. It's
when
really
you
good.
started explaining it to me, and you're like, "But we're gonna use stones," I'm like, "I don't get it." First of all, how big are they? And then you're like, 4 a.m. and
Big
I'm like,
enough.
"Okay, you're not answering. How big are the stones?" And you're like, "I'm gonna get them really hot." And when you said really hot, I didn't know you meant like I'm gonna start a fire at 4 a.m. They're gonna essentially just bake in a ripping flame until we essentially scorch this wort, which. My knowledge of brewing and homebrewing, I've never heard of, you heat your wort up, you do everything else you do. I've never seen really an induction of something that is much, much hotter coming into that wort. And I mean,
Talk about Maillard reactions.
yeah, I mean, you
Right.
think about that like Maillard, like searing a steak or something, but like what, I was really curious about what would happen when you added that to wort. And the answer is like a lot of steam and a lot of clarity firm. But
Right. A lot.
So the when that stone goes into the wort, there's a name for this reaction, but the stone is so hot that it forms a vapor barrier around the stone. So the wort is making direct contact with the stone, but it's not like sitting on there and getting scorched because there's so much physical action happening. There's this nice little protective barrier. So we did put a grill grate in the bottom of the wooden barrel. Speaking of the process, we used a barrel from our friends at Angel's Envy. Knocked the head out of it and transferred the wort into there and then put the stones in there. I put the grill grate on the bottom just in case direct contact of the stones to the wood would give us any kind of scorch or off flavors. After draining the barrel and emptying it, there was this perfect grill grate like toast to the bottom of the barrel. So it did its job in protecting the wood. This was a barrel that wasn't charred, which made for an interesting kind of interplay to where we weren't trying to get barrel character. And so using this barrel specifically allowed us to get the process, so to speak, in line without, taking a chance on it coming out tasting like bourbon or something like that. So this was an Angel's Envy barrel that was port finished or a port barrel that was
used
bourbon
for finishing
finished.
Angels Envy.
And then we aged a wee heavy Scotch ale in it. So the barrel had been through a couple of cycles in its life before we got it, and then absolutely obliterated it with hot stones. And
Yeah.
There will be
Fire.
a secondary video too. This will probably be like the podcast, but we'll have a secondary video. I'll put a link to it somewhere where anybody can see or down below, or if you guys want to see what that looked
Click
like when those
here.
went in there. Yeah, click here.
Yeah, right there. And Buddy, you conceptualized this whole like process before any of us, I think, realized it.
I think Will conceptualized it.
Did he?
the two of us talked about it.
Yeah.
I think it was a KGB meeting here, and he was like, "We should do a brew together." And I was like, "Cool. What are you into?" And we like
I think we both. I think I mentioned
both expressed
Steinbier, and we were like, he was like,
historical
yeah.
styles.
Because you are kind of a historical beer fan, I
Oh
would say.
yeah, I love history.
Well, and you sourced the rocks.
I did source the rocks.
So, this is not a dumb question, but like, how did you pick the rocks?
So what I found was when people nowadays do Stein beers, they usually use granite. So I just went to a local store, like an outdoor shop. We have flowers and stuff like that, like gravel, and they literally had a stack of granite rocks, and each of them was about 30 pounds, I
Yeah.
believe. And after Buddy had them in the fire pit, they started splitting. So adding them to the beer was a lot easier than literally chugging 30 pounds of rocks.
Yeah. And I guess maybe we'll just take a step back for people listening. And I think Buddy touched on this a bit, but the whole idea behind Steinbier, metal is kind of a modern luxury that brewers have access to. Like back in even 100 years ago, it was pretty rare for people to have, maybe 200 years ago is a better example, but it's a fairly modern invention to have giant stainless tanks. Wood is cheap and easily available pretty much everywhere. So for most of human history, people actually just dug mortars into the bedrock and used that for their mash tuns. And then probably only around, 3000 BC or so, they started making wooden vats to hold it or clay vats to hold it. How do you heat that? It's not so easy to do if it's wood. So the idea of taking those rocks, like Will sourced, putting them in a giant fire, I think you said you showed up at 4 a.m. to start stoking that.
Yeah, so I got some oak from my buddy up the street, John King. goodbye drunk wood. He gave me a load of wood, and I made a fire and put the stones in there, and then continually fed the fire over the course of about 4 hours.
And the amount of beer that we heated up was it was basically a barrel, so it was like 50 gallons or so.
Well, so this is a port barrel, so it was like 60 gallons.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you probably had, what, a dozen or so granite stones?
About 10.
And they each weighed probably, what, 20, 30 pounds?
About 30 pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was an undertaking. Will made the right choice on the stone. You know, you want a stone that's not going to explode.
That's what I was wondering, because like if you used like a low grade, like maybe you couldn't do it with bricks.
Yeah.
Like,
No,
It's
and
a igneous versus sedimentary.
okay.
I'm harkening back to like second grade.
Or just like if you're a
Geology.
home brewer and you want to like make a Steinbier, like find a good rock.
Yeah.
is what I'm
and
saying.
make sure it's dry, or at least you dry it out for a while. I had to, set it in storage for a couple of weeks to let them dry out, because what makes them explode is all the water that's inside the stone. When you overheat, water and heat expand, so that's what causes the explosion. So make sure they're dry. Make sure you at least be as safe as you can.
The traditional stone that was used was most likely sandstone. The evolution of the Steinbier over the course of multiple hundreds of years, everyone kind of figured out like, oh yeah, this stone works the best. So red sandstone, gray sandstone, granite worked perfectly.
we should have used like an emerald.
I was going to say, so next time, whenever we inevitably make our
Precious
next batch,
stones?
are we going to get into like rock snob terroir? Like, are we going to be like
Well, we could use like quartz, and then we could like sell it at a holistic
spiritualism?
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be baptized. It's basically baptized at that point. I mean,
The stones are.
yeah, let's just make a church. It's fine.
So if you guys do want to try it, come on into Monnik. It'll be available now by the time that you listen to this, and it really is number
And
one.
Brew
It's
Bridge.
And Brew Bridge,
and Brew Bridge. Yes, thank you very much. It's a good opportunity to try something unique, and it's a good opportunity to like take a step back in time. And I don't know about you guys, but like we've been through the whole cycle of craft beer where it's been pale ale, lager, IPA, sours, barrel aged, historical beer. I
we're
think
going
is something
back.
that doesn't get enough appreciation, and it's good beer to drink, but it's like, I don't know.
Is it
I
good?
really
You
find the
haven't
story
opened
behind
yours.
it. All
How do we
right,
know?
A funny aside, the kind of first modern reference to Steinbier was Michael Jackson had a Steinbier in Franconia. The head brewer's name was Gerd Borgs.
It's my uncle's name.
Gerd Borgs. And he used the modern methods of putting the stones in the wort. Oh, man.
Well, cheers,
I already
gents.
drained mine.
Cheers. This is the first time I've tried it right now.
Cheers.
So before, all right. Wow.
Tasting notes, David.
No, I wanted to start with the can because you work outside in, like the beer goes from the outside in. Put the rocks on the outside, the beer go back inside. Anyways, this is a great can label. This is a little deviation from Monnik's standard label, which I think is great because it does involve some other partners, Brew Bridge, Ale Trail. But the title is A Secret Fire, and there's one person at this table that knows exactly why it's called Secret Fire. John, do you care?
I was assuming it was the person wearing the wizard hat.
No, actually, it's not.
I think we were all still debating on names, and I think we're all kind of Lord of the Rings nerds here as well. So Barlin Butterbur, I suspect, had a giant metal cask to brew in, like a gift from the ancient kings of Arnor. The Numenorians definitely brought like iron beer casks over from the Doom Dial of Numenor to set up the Northern Kingdom of Arnor. But anyway, we were thinking like all these like Lord of the Rings references. I can't remember exactly how we landed on Sacred Fire, but
We thought about the Balrog because I was trying
Yeah.
to think of like mythical creatures that are stone and fire, and all the references to the Balrog, like it was scales
And
but
chaos.
like stony
fire and
magma
shadow and stone.
scales. Yeah, exactly. So that was the first kind of name kicked around, and then people who know more about the series than I do. I only ever read the first one,
Yeah.
The Hobbit.
That's the first one.
Which one was written first, David?
I will have to refer to J.R.R. Tolkien.
The Hobbit was written first. Yeah, he wrote it on the back of one of his like students' papers. He just like it came into his head.
Do
In a
some
hole in the
research.
ground, there lived a Hobbit, and that was the beginning of it all. Although he had written the whole mythology out, like just in his nerdiness of inventing languages and stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, so Secret Fire. Although this might not be the drink of the prancing pony, since we do think Barliman Butterbur had metal tanks. If you were at the Green Dragon in Hobbiton, I think this is exactly what that
The
would have
Baggins
tasted
has
like.
favored it
Yeah.
easily.
And so as far as what it does taste like,
gonna
I
ask Will.
swear
I'm
I
gonna
can
ask
get
Will.
some of those stones coming through the nose. Maybe it's because I remember, but yeah.
Will's halfway through.
I want you guys to give tasting notes because I have some things that I pick up from the brew day that I will lean into, but conversationally, it would make more sense for you guys to say tasting it for the first time because I've
Yeah.
tasted it every day for 6 to 8 weeks. So
I'm gonna go first, I guess.
Yeah, go.
Yeah.
You get a little bit of malt sweetness. I do get a little bit of fruitiness, but not in an offensive way. It's still very clean. I think the hops play very well with it. It's got a nice little hop backbone to it. Not thin at all. Nice carbonation. It's really enjoyable.
I think it's a really light Bock. Like it's got all the body of a Bock, but it's just got that grainy Helles backbone in it. And
So BJCP guidelines state that to call it a Bock it has to be 6.3% up to a certain amount. So that's why we chose 6.3%.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want I didn't want to we've got plenty of barrel aged and strong beers on right now because it's the winter season and it's ideal for those types of things. I wanted something kind of in the middle, and so when we discussed the recipe, I was like, let's aim for that lower threshold.
Yeah, it's
of
not
ABV.
boozy at all. I mean, you can drink
I
several of
think
these, no
the
problem.
middle is right where it still
Yeah.
has that golden straw, color, but it by all purposes is a Bock.
Well, but I'll speak to the fact that it's not exactly just a Bock. Like, and again, maybe this is like, we'll have to get you guys to come and try it and let us know what you think too. But like, maybe it's because I was there. But I can taste that there is something more going on in here. So I'll also say this. We took off like a half a gallon of just this. We did the 50 gallons, 60 gallons, and then blended that back into the full batch of the Helles Bock or whatever. But we did take a little bit of it off and ferment it on its own. I was just complaining to you guys how weird that like concentrated Steinbier was.
It's the
There are
start.
hints of it in this though, because I was describing it to you guys. It almost had like a little bit of that, like if you barely touch your tongue on like a 9-volt battery for half a second, and it's that little bit of like, in the best way possible, that little bit of like a bright tingle on the front of your tongue. And I think that's a little bit of like some mineralization maybe from the rocks, and maybe even a little bit of like carbonic like ash that
It
kind
does
of
have
came
like
through.
a hard water.
Yeah,
like
yeah, that's a good way to
limestone
describe
water,
that, yeah.
minerally.
And when you say ash, it's not ashy. Like
ashy.
it's not burnt or it's not scorched or
It's
it's,
like
not
the
smoky.
memory of an ash or
Because you
something.
still get a lot of the maltiness from that, a little bit of caramel from that Maillard reaction for sure. I still get that because we tasted it off the barrel and it's completely different from the rest of the wort that was in the mash tun.
Yeah, we picked up about 3 degrees Plato in the process of stoning this beer.
This beer
It's
got
about-
real
and-
stoned.
It boiled about for like what 20 minutes straight.
No, I mean it was still rumbling
Right.
by the time we blended them. So we're talking about a full 120-minute process, start to finish, where we were still seeing agitation and bubbles from the bottom. It wasn't as vigorous,
Right.
But I think the interaction between the stone and the wort was still happening. The one thing that after you guys have given your tasting notes, the thing that I get, and this is partially because I'm the one that cleaned the barrel out, I get the port. And when you mentioned
Sure.
like this
Fruitiness.
subtle
Yeah.
fruitiness, there's this touch of winey kind of fortified wine character, and being the one that cleaned the barrel out, when we put the wort into that barrel, the staves were purple. When I cleaned that barrel out, the staves were no longer purple. So there was some potential extraction that happened, and it just puts this base note of fruitiness in there that doesn't feel inappropriate for the style.
Not at all. No.
I mean, you swirl that around and give it a whiff. And it's something.
That's the biggest, as far as when we engage in these like silly methods to make beer. Will is a proponent of decoction mashing as much as I am, probably more, because he has the ability to do it without having to do it manually.
Technology, baby.
When you're in the brew house on those brew days and you can smell what that decoction gives you as you're boiling this amount of mash away, or you're doing a Steinbier in a barrel, those aroma things go into your brain, and then when the beer comes out, you think about those things. You're not doing it intentionally, but you can pick out those nuances that you're not going to get from grain.
Yeah.
It's process-driven beer, and so the process that we came up with to make this work for a Steinbier has directly contributed to the overall flavor profile and aroma of the finished product. And it's amazing to see it start to finish. Because if you didn't know, you'd have no clue what you were drinking. You'd be like, oh, uh-oh.
I amused myself with the joke.
I do like the idea. You said it, and I've heard it before, but just a process-driven beer. And like when you think of tradition and historical, that's it. Like people want to contemplate the ingredients and technology of as far as even from the agricultural perspective or the hop perspective of different technologies, but it's the process. It's how you are stringent in your procedures, just like a manufacturing plant, anything like that's how you get the most interesting results. Or most
it's all quality.
Yeah.
Think about it. You can't just make cheddar cheese at home.
Right.
Yeah.
I think there's a much more lax view about what it means to be a home brewer or like engaging in that type of thing as a hobby. But I would say we're dealing with something just as much complex, more science involved, most likely than something like that. But like to think about beer in that realm is kind of like we discount it because you just mix water with malt and hops, throw some yeast in there, and you get this thing. But if you're ignoring process and what you can get from focusing on process when you're developing recipes, you're losing an opportunity to make that connection with every step of the process.
Right. I mean, you can essentially have the same recipe, switch out the process, and come up with a different beer every single time.
Yeah, and that's the commercial breweries. I mean, even like Bell's, you can get a two-hearted recipe, but like good luck making it because there's a procedural piece there. Like,
For sure.
Yeah.
And to me, that's one of the most exciting things as we are here, like getting ready to go into 2025. Like, I feel like beer is at kind of a turning point in terms of like we've all been in this game for quite a while, and we've all grown up drinking cheap our dad's beer out of the fridge, and then figuring out that you like Newcastle or Guinness, and then moving on to try pale ales, and then you get IPAs, and then we went into fruited IPAs, and then we went into sours, and then we went into barrel aged stouts, and then we went into like hazy IPAs, and then we went into like fruity hazy IPAs, and then we went into milkshake IPAs, and then we went into sour fruity hazy milkshake barrel aged IPAs. And
He's
then
still going, folks.
And then finally you go back to light lagers. Every single time.
Exactly. And so I don't know. That's a question I've been asking myself and thinking a lot about lately. It's like, what gets me out of bed in the morning? Beer. But like
fire.
This is the kind of thing that it gets me excited because, like you said, it's about the process and it's about the attention to detail and stuff. But then it's also that little connection to history. Yeah, it's super fun to come think like, hey, this might be like, what beer tasted like at the
in 1982.
Yeah, right.
Well, kind of like the Kentucky Common. I mean,
Sure, absolutely. Well,
Why-
I
why
was
you gotta
even
make
going to
it
say
about
like
common?
back to the.
It's in the name of the podcast.
Oh,
yeah. So anyway, if you guys are history fans or beer fans, come give this a try.
Also, I don't know how much they can see. This color that you see, this darker golden hue, is driven by the stones. So I pulled samples from what was in the barrel versus what we had run off to the kettle and held them side by side, and there was a stark contrast in color. And that's all driven by the Maillard reactions that were happening with those stones being in direct contact with the wort, which is really cool to not just be able to taste and feel. Like, I think there's a mouthfeel associated with that, but to be able to actually see it and like, yeah, we did something. Like, there's a physical and chemical change that happened in this process, and it's just cool to make that connection.
Yeah.
Louisville is this little bubble. I always love when people come in from out of town. You're here constantly.
Yeah,
which I'm
you're
like,
more than
rip your gas
most
mileage.
people,
But,
yeah.
But like, I just want to know what's going on out in Owensboro.
Not much.
Speaking to the mic.
I am. I
No,
wanna
you
know
were
what's
doing
going
this.
on. in
Well,
Owensboro.
we have two breweries now. I mean, y'all interviewed somebody from the pub on Second, and I think Goodwood's there now, so we're slightly growing in craft beer. No, but not. I mean, I've only lived in Owensboro for 5 years, so I just
Only 5 years.
Yeah,
So
only
you've
5
seen a
years.
lot though. But you came from New York.
I
big
came from
city.
Buffalo, New York.
Why Owensboro?
Why Owensboro? I don't know. My wife lives around Owensboro.
Yeah, it's a family.
No, it's nice and quiet. It's not a bustling city, which I kind of like. I mean, I'm
Bowling
not,
Green.
Yeah, like Bowling Green.
It does have distilleries though. Like
There's there's
distilling.
Green River. Like I said, I used to work there for a few months during COVID.
Is it Sazerac that is?
That's the other one.
Okay.
That's the bottling facility, Sazerac.
I say, what does your all's average customer look like these days? And what does your average new customer look like these days?
It's hard. It changes all the time. It really does. Sometimes we have an older customer base. Sometimes we have a younger customer base. And I mean, like we already discussed, I like traditional styles. I like brewing traditional, like continental lagers, but we are literally doing everything. Like yesterday, I posted a picture of a blue sour beer, and it took a lot of people by surprise. That's not my style to drink, but I know a lot of people that love that style, and I just like making beer, period. I mean, no matter what the style is, sure, I might like, traditional styles more to drink and make, but hey.
And maybe it's too personal, but I think you said that was made for a friend of the brewery.
It was, yeah. One of our friends, his daughter passed, so I got with him and his wife, and that beer was to replicate one of her favorite ice cream flavors, blue raspberry, coconut, pineapple. It turned out great. I mean, don't get me wrong, it turned out really good. I think the color is really gonna attract people to it. We made sure we pasteurize it too, so we don't want any exploding can.
All those students from WKU are going to be so happy too.
yeah.
But as far as customer, it's changed. It's
Nobody got it.
I got it. It just wasn't funny.
It just changes with the season. I mean, yeah.
I think that's one of the cool things too. Like going back to the beer that you brewed for, somebody personal connection kind of to do one. That's the fun thing about, like, especially what I think is going to be hopefully an emerging trend. I feel like the entire country is reappreciating and maybe even moving towards like trad values. Are you guys into like TikTok like trends? Like people kind of wanting to leave the big city life and kind of go towards more. I mean, even Louisville's a small town compared to, other places, but then even going to like Owensboro, Bowling Green, Lexington, I feel like there's a lot of interest in stuff like that. And I feel like the breweries are going to be the first people who really start to see that there is a renewed interest in people kind of wanting more of like a small town life.
Yeah, not just that. We really want to connect with our local, clientele. Like the collab or the beer we made for him and his family. A portion of the proceeds is going to a local foundation. We have a beer over here actually. that I brought.
Let's crack
Let's
it.
give you.
Yeah, before we crack more of these.
Yeah, it's an American Pale Ale, and we use the YCH Veterans Blend. So it's a blend of 5. They're all on the back, 5 hops, I believe, and $3 out of every pound of hops that you get from Yakima Valley Chief go to. Let me see.
Stop
right
Soldier
here.
Suicide.
Stop Soldier Suicide,
That's
which
awesome.
is the only national nonprofit organization dedicated solely to reducing the suicide rates among our nation's veterans.
Yeah.
And we every time we have an opportunity to brew a beer for any organization that we feel affiliated to, we have a strong cause towards. We definitely do it. We do a beer yearly for Stash Strong. I think there's another brewery here in town that does one. I think 1020 does it, and that's for brain cancer awareness. We've done so many charitable beers, but so American Pale Ale brewed with lager yeast. So we brewed this under pressure, so it's nice and clean, but you get all the nice tropical citrus notes from that Veterans Blend.
Great little camo logo here too.
Yeah, but if you drop this while you're like out in the mowing the yard, how are you going to find the can? That's my major concern.
You run it over with the mower. Beer shower.
First, we'll do some brief tasting notes on this one too. I smell that hop blend right off the bat. I mean, I think you said you canned this like literally today, right?
This morning.
It's as fresh as it gets, folks.
Yeah, same with this. We just that wasn't planned.
buddy, we're talking about the pale ale.
No, that wasn't planned. We both brought beers that were canned fresh this morning, which
That's
is pretty
awesome.
cool.
Yeah, so Veterans
perks.
Blend includes Citra, Crystal, Euconaut,
Smell a little Euconaut?
El Dorado,
I read it.
and Simcoe.
I definitely smell the Simcoe and the Citra freshness off the nose, like just kind of dank pineapple, grapefruity. It smells fantastic. Good head retention. That's looking beautiful.
A lot of carapace.
Yeah, buddy poured properly.
Look at the jiggle. Can you do a zoom in slow mo of the jiggle?
Yeah, we can.
Oh, yeah.
We're gonna
wow.
put that in post, guys.
That'll be on the only
It'll be
cans.
the thumbnail.
Very light,
Wavering
very fresh
hand.
tasting. Not an insignificant malt profile, but like subdued. It's not sweet, but there is a little bit of graininess to it, like honey, kind of toasty biscuit. But then just the hops come through. It's not super bitter. It's very drinkable, but there's a lot of good hop aromatics there.
Cool.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's
Delicious.
always
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, no problem.
You're welcome.
the breweries in bigger cities can sometimes lose that kind of community feel. You know what you're talking about, doing things for regulars, doing things for smaller endeavors, I guess. But the way I've always thought about breweries is kind of serving their community. I mean, that's why you're there. That's why you're in a neighborhood that's, you know, in Europe, that's really more akin to how they operate, is like we're going to the neighborhood pub.
Yeah, social setting.
Right. So it's cool that you're fulfilling that, obviously, here. I think Monnik does a great job as well here.
We do our goddamn best.
You
You can bleep that out. I don't know if this is PG or
Not anymore.
No.
We just lost that. Thanks, buddy.
No, but
demonetized.
you go to Chicago and there's a lot of great breweries up there, and then you kind of wonder, like, what are they doing for their, you know, little local community, or is there a local community, or is it oversaturated? And you know, that's where I think, like, John kind of being back in, not like trad domestic economics or whatever.
I only
but,
said
like,
that for the algorithm.
fair enough. But like there will be a calling. I mean, I think people recognize authenticity in your beer, in your location, in your like service. It'll, you know,
Yeah, there's more to marketing than like having like the coolest, fanciest can art or like the best Instagram or like the following the trends. Like the best marketing is like connecting with the people
Right.
inside of your community, and then like, and I'll agree with David that like Monnik has always kind of led the way on that here too in Louisville. And I mean, it helps if you make really freaking good beer too.
Right.
So
We're trying our best. One thing that I don't want to bring the room down, but
it can only go up from here.
I think it's important to acknowledge. I think you kind of hinted towards it, but the state of craft beer is in a weird spot,
Extremely.
Definitely.
and the biggest thing to overcome is how do you keep selling beer? And for certain people, they've gone new age with extremely crazy off the wall styles and how many cookies can we put in the beer?
That's what we're doing.
But I would also say that like there are people that are kind of like backing away from that and going like, okay, well the heyday of craft beer was in the late 90s and then again in like 2015. What was working then? And I think the most important thing to acknowledge is like a brewery is only as good as its impact on its community. And if we lose that connection, chasing that almighty dollar, then what are we doing? Like, what's the point of any of this if we're not
Right.
staying true to ourselves and staying true to our clientele? I'm all about finding what works, and if it's gimmicky beer and it works for you and you make a connection, like I don't
like
give
if you're putting rocks in like to a barrel.
exactly. I don't give a shit what you have to do to make those
Demonetized.
connections. But we struggle with this every day. Like everyone's, comping year over year under, and it's like there are all these new competitors in the market. You got RTDs, you've got weed seltzers now that we have to compete with. Yeah. So how do we maintain the connections that we have?
And it changes all the time too.
For sure.
Yeah.
But maintain those connections that we currently have and foster them into future connections. And I think the biggest thing is like connecting with community, keeping it local. We're like deep roots is more important than spread. Mm-hmm. That tree that has the roots go way far out from the base is the one that's going to fall over when the storm comes. So like I said, I don't want to bring the room down. We all know that craft beer is in a state of limbo. And so, doing collabs with someone like Will, doing collabs with you guys that care about historical context and quality, that's important for us going forward to make sure that craft beer doesn't go off too far from the right path.
I mean, that's kind of John. If you're a long-term follower, you probably haven't seen an episode from us from a little while, and that's a little bit of the same sentiment. There's been a lull, and it's how do you tell the story of why this is still a great thing to participate in, and collaborations like this that have unique identities to them that make great product is kind of our goal. Is like, this is a great story. Let's explain how we came up with this. Let's tell people what this is. And we continue to intend on just telling those stories.
And to me, a lot of it too, it's just like trying to reconnect with, what was it, Nietzsche? Man is born, an infant, and then becomes a camel.
Didn't he die?
Taking the burden. Don't go into his life history. Just read it, and then you become the lion out there trying to conquer the world. But like the goal is to become a child again and to become enamored by the thing that it brought you into craft beer originally. So how do we get ourselves excited about this again? I think has to be the leading thought, and this is a great example of that to me. Like going back to because history nerds are still around, and I'm one, and you're one. Lord of the Rings nerds. That's always a thing.
And I think, like Buddy said, collaborations. I've noticed a lot of breweries are doing collaborations, and I think not just to make more connections, but also harkening back to making connections with the community too. Because people that come to Monnik all the time are now going to be exposed to us, and vice versa. Yeah. So that builds a more sense of community, a more interconnective community. And I absolutely we've tried that. I told one of my buddies that 2024 is going to be the year of the collab for us, and I think so far we've done.
You have definitely achieved that
a lot in Louisville.
Yeah. So,
go ahead.
In our managers meetings every quarter, we come up with rocks, and the rocks are just things that you can like extra
are they hot
things.
Rocks.
We're going back to rocks.
This is a whole podcast about rocks.
Things that you want to accomplish outside of your normal everyday. And my biggest one going into the new year was to do more collabs. Mm-hmm. And a little inside baseball, the beauty of a collab is you can get as weird as you want, and the liability is less than if you did it by yourself, because you've doubled your exposure with clientele. You've split a batch with someone. So we've done collabs with smoke beers twice in the last year. Everyone knows smoke beer is probably not the highest rated thing, and
unfortunately,
agreed.
But when we do these collabs, it allows us to kind of like right the ship for some of the things that we want to see from craft beer right now. And someone that may have never had a smoked beer before gets exposed to it without us exposing ourselves by having 10 barrels of smoked beer that we got to figure out how to sell through. So collabs are an amazing tool for us and a resource for us to be able to do something as strange and wonderful as this without putting ourselves in peril of having to dump the beer because no one cares.
Yeah. Why do you guys think Guinness is so popular right now?
I don't know. I started asking myself that question.
I don't even
I have
Guinness that much.
I like Guinness.
I have two examples.
Yeah.
There's a gentleman on Instagram, and I'm sure all of the other social media things. He's a portly fellow, and he just goes to different pubs throughout his native land.
Hey, buddy.
And talks about... I'm not talking about you.
Okay.
And he goes, "Hello, Muttonistas, I'm in such and such pub today, and we're going to see if they've got a bloody creamer." And then he drinks it, and he's like, "Oh, just like I thought, it's great." And he's got flags that you can buy, and he's got like mass appeal. And then there's another guy, kind of the opposite of this dude. He's like square-jawed, muscly dude, big beard, like fuzzy eyebrows, and he just like stands with a pastoral scene behind him somewhere in Ireland, and he's like, "It's a great day for creamy fucking pints," and then he pounds a pint of Guinness, and I'm like, okay, this appeals to two of your modern drinkers: the guy that thinks he's tough and rough and wants to show that he is, and so he's the guy trying to split the G, and then you've got people that are just like trying to have a good time and drink beer, and you have these two like opposite sides of that coin.
Yeah, I'm on board now. I want a creamer.
There's several of those Guinness Instagram pages where people just go to different pubs and rate their Guinness. I've seen several of those, and like you said, I don't know. I love Guinness, but I don't know why it's becoming popular all of a sudden.
I hated Guinness when I was just getting into homebrewing. Someone's like, "Oh, you must love Guinness." It's like, I've never had it.
That was like my gateway beer right there, Guinness.
I got it, and I was like, "This tastes like dirty old iced tea," like because my palate wasn't ready for it. And
I still think that.
I'll drink 40 Guinness right now. Like,
Yeah, same.
let's
Oh,
go
yeah.
somewhere.
What?
Well,
You
it's
and I.
also okay, so it's also you can be slightly health conscious and drink Guinness. Like it's lower carb, it's lower calorie.
Wasn't it originally marketed by not by doctors,
Yeah, sure.
but it was promoted by doctors for nursing mothers and stuff like that to promote health.
Absolutely.
So
So I think there's
What
some
do you
good
have to
to
say
that.
about
Guinness is
that,
good for
David?
you, David. It's good for you.
It's good. I like the NA Guinness. It's actually great.
Get out of here.
It's a great option for sure.
Yeah. No. But
And then I think pub culture. I think I've seen it, like you were saying, like those counts. Like I've been seeing so many like English, like Welsh, like Irish pub culture accounts coming into my feed. I'm like, where's this
And they
coming
get
from?
millions of
Yeah.
likes.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like people are longing for like cozy. People are longing for like authenticity and like a tie into history. And I don't know, people are just longing for a connection to something. And people also like beer. And people have been like told like, beer is X, all these things that we just kind of went through the long litany of. It's like, that's not what beer is. That was when people were basically trying to figure out what's the next new thing. What's the next new thing?
all right, the next podcast, I'm drinking 6 Guinness. And
Yeah.
By the end
Yeah,
of
sure.
6 of them, I'll
Absolutely.
tell you if I still don't like it that much.
The first Guinness you drink, well, especially here in America, you can really only get it out of the little cans, and it's got the widget, and it's like,
No, I can go to Outlook Inn and I can just
Sure.
We can just sit there and I just have 6.
the first one you drink,
a
you're
lot of
like,
Outlook
oh, this
in.
is kind of
That's right.
weird. The fourth one you drink, you're like, this is beautiful. Yeah.
All right.
You got to get sloshed first for you to like it.
I'm in, wait, that's like the argument from a wart. I can't do that. Like
My second Guinness ever was at Bonnaroo in 2000.
I remember that story. I remember that story.
And this guy was selling beers out of his cooler on Shakedown Street, and it was like 2 beers for $5, and I bought a Sierra Nevada and I bought a bottle of Guinness, and I drank them on my way back to the tent after a show. And when I got to the bottom of the bottle of Guinness, there was this click clack thing going on. I was like,
widget.
oh my
widget.
god, I had no idea what a widget was, or
Was it in the
wa-
bottle?
That was a thing. It looks like kind of like a torpedo.
Oh, I didn't know bottled ones had them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're
I thought that this hippie had spiked my beer with acid, and so I laid
Best trip
Just
of my
waiting
life.
for
I
the
laid
trip
in
to
the
come
tent in my tent, like waiting for the trip to come.
Yeah.
I'm like, God bless it, this guy got me.
the next
got
90
me.
So then
minutes are
you
about
were
to be-
let down. I'm sure.
I fell asleep. I was good.
All right. Well, gentlemen, I think one more cheers might be in order here.
Well, we got to discuss our next
Yeah.
collab.
Well,
we got
sure.
to do an Egyptian beer with the little reed straws and the gruel, and
before the history event that we did at Fraser, I bottled the ingredients to do like the ancient like Sumerian ale with like
dates.
saffron and like yes, I bought a bunch of dates and I bought date syrup, cardamom. About a bunch of
Cardamom, raw
unmalted wheat. We could try to
cardamom.
make some bapir. We could try to make that like
Yes.
ancient bread and do it. So yeah, gentlemen, cheers.
Cheers.